You just got back from this amazing trip. 10 days in Portugal, the light, the tiles, those afternoons where time seemed to slow down. You felt alive there in a way you hadn't felt in months. So you meet up with friends at your usual bar. A couple of drinks in, you start telling them about it. About this little restaurant you found in Lisbon. How you got lost in the Alfama district and didn't even care. How you sat by the ocean in Cascais and something shifted. You're mid-sentence describing this moment on the beach when someone's phone buzzes. Another friend jumps in with a story about their boss. The conversation pivots. Within 2 minutes, you're not talking about Portugal anymore. You're talking about someone's upcoming promotion and whether they should take it. And you stop. You let it go. Because you can feel it. They weren't really listening. Not in the way you needed them to. You sit there with your drink, half smiling at the right moments, nodding when you're supposed to. But underneath, there's this creeping realization. I'm the only person who cares about this story. And then, quieter. Maybe I'm the only person who cares about any of my stories. You finish your drink, you go home, and that feeling from Portugal, that aliveness feels impossibly far away. Or maybe it happens differently. You're at a concert, a band you used to love, playing a venue you've been to a dozen times. You're surrounded by people, all of you swaying to the same music, singing the same lyrics. This should feel good. This is the kind of thing you always enjoyed. But standing there, you think, what am I doing here? Not in a judgmental way, just genuine confusion, like you're watching someone else live your life. You don't hate it, you're just not moved by it anymore. The things that used to make you feel something, concerts, bars, weekend trips with friends, they're still fine, but they're not filling anything. You leave early, you tell people you're tired, and maybe you are, but the real truth is simpler. You don't know what you're doing there because you don't know what you're doing anywhere. The things that mattered when you were younger don't land the same way anymore. But you haven't figured out what matters instead. So you keep showing up to things, hoping one of them will eventually feel like the answer. Here's what's going on. You've changed, but your life hasn't caught up yet. The person you were 5 years ago built this life, chose these friends, decided what success and fun looked like. That person had different needs, different values, and for a while it worked. The life you built actually fit you, but somewhere along the way, you outgrew it. Not all at once, gradually, so gradually that you didn't even notice until you were standing in the middle of it, feeling like a stranger in your own routine. This is what happens when your external life stops reflecting your internal reality. You're still going through the motions, seeing friends, doing activities, checking boxes, but none of it connects to who you're becoming. And your brain knows. It sends you signals, restlessness, disconnection, a hollow feeling that sits just underneath everything. The trip to Portugal worked because you were off script. You weren't performing your usual role. You were just present, noticing things, following your curiosity, and for those 10 days, you felt like yourself in a way you hadn't in your regular life. But then you came home, and your regular life was still there, waiting, and the gap between who you were in Portugal and who you are here, that gap is the emptiness you're feeling. The problem isn't that your friends are bad or that concerts aren't meaningful. The problem is that you're trying to force an old version of your life to fit a new version of you, and it doesn't. You're not broken. You're becoming someone different, and that someone needs different things. But nobody tells you this is normal, that it's okay to not want what you used to want, that outgrowing your own life is part of growing up. So instead, you think something's wrong with you. You wonder why you can't just be happy with what you have. Why this sense of more won't leave you alone. Not more stuff, more meaning. It won't leave you alone because it isn't supposed to. It's trying to tell you something. The Stoics had a teaching about this. There's a lesser-known parable about a man named Gaius. Gaius was a successful merchant in Rome. He spent decades building his business, cultivating relationships, attending the same social gatherings, playing the same role. Everyone knew him. He was good at it. But one year, he took a trip to Athens. He wasn't there for business, just curiosity. And while walking through the Agora one afternoon, listening to philosophers debate, something cracked open in him. He realized he'd spent 20 years having the same conversations, grain shipments, trade routes, and not once had anyone asked what he actually thought about anything. When he returned to Rome, he tried to share what he'd experienced. He invited his usual circle to dinner and started talking about ideas, questions about virtue, about what makes a life well lived. His friends humored him for a few minutes. Then someone changed the subject to business. And Gaius realized something. These people don't know me. They know the role I play. And I've been playing it so long, I forgot there was anything else. He went to see a Stoic teacher and said, "I feel like I'm living someone else's life." The teacher asked, "Whose life are you living?" Gaius thought for a moment. "The life I thought I was supposed to want." The teacher nodded. The Stoics believed we each have a nature, a way of being that's uniquely ours. When you live in accordance with that nature, you feel at home in your life. When you don't, you feel like an exile, even in familiar places. Gaius didn't abandon his business, but he stopped showing up to gatherings that felt hollow. He sought out people who asked real questions. He began writing, something he'd always wanted to do. His old friends thought he'd changed, and he had. But really, he'd just stopped pretending. The insight is simple. Living with purpose doesn't mean finding a grand mission. It means paying attention to what feels true for you and having the courage to build your life around that, even when it means letting go of what no longer fits. Buddhism approaches this from another angle. There's a parable about a monk named Tenzin. He lived in a monastery high in the mountains. He devoted his life to practice, meditation, study, service. From the outside, it looked like he'd found his purpose. But one day, sitting in meditation, he realized something. He wasn't there because it made him come alive. He was there because it looked like the right answer, because people respected monks, because it seemed like the kind of life that should feel meaningful. But it didn't, not really. He was going through the motions, a spiritual life, the same way someone else might go through the motions of a corporate one. He went to his teacher and confessed, "I thought dedication would bring peace, but I feel empty." His teacher wasn't surprised. "You're attached to the idea of purpose," he said. "You think there's a perfect life you're supposed to live, and you're searching for it. But that searching is the suffering." Tenzin didn't understand. The teacher continued, "Purpose isn't something you find once. It isn't a destination. It's a quality of attention. When you're truly present with what you're doing, when you stop measuring it against what your life should be, that's when meaning arises." He told Tenzin to stop trying to be a good monk and instead notice what made him feel most present. Not proud, not accomplished, just present. Tenzin paid attention, and he noticed something. The moments he felt most alive weren't during formal meditation. They were in the garden, in the kitchen, listening to someone struggle with a question he'd once struggled with himself. He didn't leave the monastery, but he stopped performing the role of monk and started actually being one in his own way. The teaching is about non-attachment. We get attached to what a meaningful life should look like, and we miss the meaning that's already here. We search for purpose and overlook the moments when we already feel purposeful. Purpose isn't out there. It's here, in the quality of your attention, in what you choose to care about, in how you show up.